Chris Whalen CPA, the man with all of your tax advice. ChrisWhalenCPA.com. Hire him. He does an amazing job during tax season. But what he's here to talk about today is the fact that the Wall Street Journal is parroting something we heard from the World Economic Forum a few years ago. The extreme renters who own nothing, not even their jeans. It's not just leasing your car, Christmas trees, camping gear, and even caskets are up for rent. They profile a few people who are a little younger than I am, in their 30s, and talk about, oh, here's 20 somethings. Okay. But they do have somebody a little bit older. So somewhere in the 20-30 range. They don't own the place they live. They don't own their cars. They don't even own their furniture. They don't own their clothes. They don't own their tools to fix the house. See, these are like the rental clothes you get cycled through every month. And it says the rent it all ecosphere isn't limited to daily necessities. Baby equipment, art pieces, even caskets, which I thought was really creepy, are also available. Potted Christmas trees are up for rent. They are returned to a forest nursery when the holiday season is over. And Chris, they might say, hey, look, we're just doing a story. Look, the silverware is rented, the bowls are rented. Why have all this stuff? The phone is rented. Why would you have all this stuff cluttering up your house when you can get rid of it when you don't like it anymore? The Wall Street Journal might say this is a phenomenon and we're just documenting it. We're not promoting it. But I would say, having read the article, that there's not really anything negative or adversarial in any way reported in this. It kind of just runs as if it's like life is good. This is the way we're moving. It just is the way things are. There's nothing that necessarily pushed people to this, which I know you're going to talk about some of the factors that got us here. It's not a very critically thought out piece. Definitely isn't anything in there talking about globalism and the World Economic Forum and, feminism or anything like that.
Right.
So I'm just curious, upon just first blush of reading it, what did you think? Were you surprised that this article
I'm
exists?
seeing that with landlords of all types, commercial and residential. We're definitely seeing that people are furnishing things and just doing an upcharge in both commercial and, like I said, with homes, or even people are selling their homes with furniture included now more often. I've seen that a lot the past year. So the article is definitely right. But I don't, again, there's different levels of income that can afford this. $100 on clothes a month might get pretty pricey, like the article stated. But
Yeah.
I think that there's a lack of a settled feeling or permanence that people had that they don't
Mhm.
have today that they used to have. Like a lot of the when I looked at this article and I've been thinking about it, it's more if you were in, like, when I grew up in Queens, New York. Well, we didn't rent things, but Mrs. Jones might have had the old plates. She gave it to my mother. The old couch. Someone was leaving
Mhm.
to take the couch, so it was much more a village feeling where everyone was sharing things and handing them down. So I think that we have
Right.
a lot less of that than we used to.
Right. That's a really good point that I had not thought about. One other takeaway from here, you mentioned it, is just this general sense of very kind of like me centered worldview, and very scared of committing to pretty much anything and trying to argue that it's for like smart financial reasons. But like you said, I don't see what is smart about like renting clothes. I don't understand how that is financially, especially when you can go to a thrift store and buy something that has already been reduced in price, which, like, I hate buying brand new clothes these days. I rarely do. And I just wear the same stuff until there's a hole in it, which then just makes it more fashionable in today's world. So I just think, the idea that they posit here, that like this is like making sense. To me, it only makes sense to someone who is either scared or just has been trained to think that commitment is a bad thing. Like, having something for a long period of time is, whatever reason they come up with, is a bad thing. And I think that's probably reflective in relationships too, right? I mean, this is the rent to lifestyle goes with the whole dating app thing. Like, where, I
Right.
go on a few dates with you after I swiped. I don't even know which way you swipe if you like somebody, but you swipe that way, you go out with them for a few dates, and then you just get rid of them because you can find somebody else. I mean, there's not even any, there's no commitment, like interest there, because no one's afraid, I guess, of not being able to find another date. I always have thought about that, years ago, 100 years ago or whatever. Well, who else am I going to find? I'm gonna stay married because I may not find anybody else. But now
Right.
everyone's like, I can find whoever I want. Let's go back on Tinder. So it's just reflective
I
of the
I
whole
I think
culture.
I think the people that would engage in the rental of clothing and furniture, are most likely adults without children. So that's part of the problem. We have a people are not developing properly. They're in their 30s without children, so they get to be teenagers and they have too much free time. People that can go about and rent furniture and change their clothes once a month have much too much free time and not enough responsibility. Me having had three daughters, I wouldn't have time to go check my mail for my new pair of jeans once a month that's coming in the mail for me. So I think that's part of the problem here is a lack of children being born. And as soon as you have children, you want permanence. You start thinking beyond yourself unselfishly, like I did. So we want to be in the good school district. We don't want to be short-term rentals. A good parent doesn't want someone to hold sway over where they live. They want to have a permanent home to buy. So that's part of the problem. We have these. They're very immature in their 20s and 30s, and anyone that can have this kind of life or play video games all day, they just haven't reached a level of adulthood. We have a lot of people that are 30 years old who are 15 years old with their mentality. They have money now, and so they go to rent clothing and they try to find things to occupy themselves. And it's a very sad that I've seen over the course of my 37-year career.
All right. Next, I'm going to ask you about the intentional side of all of this. We're going to look at the World Economic Forum's article about owning nothing in 2030 and how awesome it's going to be when none of us are going to own anything. Then, if you're somebody who, however, does want to invest in something physical and not just rent your retirement, you can text Alison to 989898 and get all the information you ever wanted to know from Birch Gold about switching your IRA or 401k into precious metals. We actually just talked to Chris about this not too long ago, how the United States is spending more on interest on the national debt than every other individual budget item except Social Security, more on Medicare, more on defense. And that has a lot of people wondering what's going to be happening at some point to the US dollar. If you're someone who doesn't want to just be invested in the US dollar, you want to have something like precious metals with your savings, then this is a great way to support the show and also get all the information you ever wanted. So again, text Alison with one L, Alison to 989898. Birch Gold's been in business over 20 years. They have an A plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands and thousands of customers, and you will at least be able to figure out whether it is right for you. Okay. Thanks everybody who supports the show. So Chris,
Can I interject about Birch Gold for a minute?
please. Yes.
So everyone really should pay attention because a lot of people are invested in the stock market with their 401k. And they really need to be diverse in their investment. We need some real property. We need some gold. We need some other assets. So if you're only invested in the 401k in the stock market, you're not diverse enough. So call Birch Gold. They'll explain how it works. You definitely don't want all your money in one basket in the stock market. That's all I wanted to say about that. People don't understand that the stock market is educated guessing and things could crash any minute. But when you have something like gold or a commodity, it's much more stable in price. So you want to have some diversity to hedge against the stock market.
Um, Or you can also diversify into livestock and feed yourself like we're trying to do. Red Pilled Americans says on Rumble, I sent Allison a rooster. She needed a wake up because we were a little late to the show. But actually, we do have 3 roosters, unfortunately, right now. We thought we had 26 chickens, but it turns out we only have 23 chickens and we have 3 roosters. And they all better behave themselves. Otherwise, they're going to become chicken soup real fast. All right, going over to this Medium article. This is published by the World Economic Forum, November 12th, 2016. Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. And man, everybody who's kind of in the alternative media space knows about this article and the World Economic Forum. I don't know if the person who wrote that article at the Wall Street Journal knows about this. There's a lot of programming that happens, I think, behind the scenes that reporters fall into believing without even knowing where it comes from. They don't realize they're regurgitating intentional propaganda. So, Chris, that's my question for you. Did we just get here? Did we just get to this point where like our parents just didn't offer us a better example? And so, we don't want to be like them, so we're just rejecting them. And it's just a natural kind of pendulum swing of generational history? Or has there been an intentional push by the puppeteers? And maybe you could tell us who you think those are to get us to this point.
Well, let's just back up 1 second. I think that there's a pride in ownership, right? There's an emotional connection to owning anything. It could be your car, your clothes, your house. And so what does that bring about? Well, it brings about wanting to fight for that. And so if you don't own anything at all, so you're definitely more prone to being told what to do and to not having pride in place. And I think that's a very important thing. People are very proud of their homes when they own a house, for example, or the car that they bought that they've had for 20 years. So I think that since the 60s, as we talked about before, there's been a lot of push to change society, have women in the workforce. So if we take a look, how does that work? So in 1960, you had one income earner, a wife at home, let's say, and kids being brought up. That wage earner had a good pension, which pensions are gone now, and that income supplied college tuition for the middle class for their children. So now we have a situation where the middle class is gone. People who think they're middle class are not middle class. Hard to say, but what I just described is a middle class life. Most people today are lower class or working poor, and so that's part of what I think the powers that be have wanted to do. They want to they want the excuse me. They want to hurt the family, and they want to make men and women unable to want to get married. If you look at what's happening today, women don't like the men because they don't make enough money, and men don't like the women because they're not traditional wives. So this is something I think that with a lot of a lot of what's been done by the powers that be, as I say, it's pretty apparent that we're in bad shape when it comes to romance and families and home building.
AlisonWinePromo.com. It is where you can support the show and get 6 bottles of amazing wine every 3 months. You will always have a great bottle for your Thanksgiving, whatever racist, sexist holiday you celebrate coming up in the next few months. Bring some wine and then have a glass of it. You'll feel much better about how terrible you are as a human being. This is a great way to support the show. They've been with me since the beginning, and they're just amazing wines. They're wines you cannot get anywhere else. They are like hand harvested grapes. They come from 6 to 9,000 feet. Chile, Argentina, Italy, Spain. They taste great. They come with great stories. They come with really the mark of generations of winemaking, people who have made wine for hundreds of years and are still using the same technique. So go check them out. They were all selected for what I really like in a product, which is just like clean product, no fillers, no dyes, none of that stuff, and stuff that just tastes really good and has a great story behind it. It's a great way to support the show. And it's a very pro free speech company that imports these wine. They visit every single vineyard for the wines that they sell. So they have like seen it firsthand, and you trust me, you can take their word for it. These are just the highest quality wines out there. AlisonWinePromo.com. I want to also tell people you can send me some mail. P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida, 34432. I get lots of cool stuff from people. I got this nice note from somebody just telling me how much they like the show. So that's always really great. Just a note of encouragement, loose pocket change, winning lottery ticket, nothing creepy, nothing edible. And also you can go to AlisonMorrow.locals.com and support the show there, AlisonMorrow.locals.com. It's a great way to be on the editorial board, get your questions in ahead of time for interviews for people like Chris. And DMSR says Chris is right. Older couples are increasingly living apart. Here's why. It's a Time article. Older couples here, you see, are increasingly living apart. Here's why. And they talk about exactly what Chris was talking about earlier. We do have some questions for Chris, though. Does Chris have a recommendation about what percentage of your portfolio to keep in gold or other non-traditional
It's
assets?
30%.
Okay, there you have it. All right, let's go real fast, Chris. I want to show people this. A future with no individual ownership is not a happy one. Property theory shows why. This was written by a couple of college professors in Australia, and they rebut the World Economic Theory. They even talk about it. The World Economic Forum predicted that by 2030, individuals would own nothing and be happy. And down here, they say, any transformative agenda that promotes the abolition of individual ownership should be rejected on account of its failure to properly take account not only of human happiness, but of the human condition more generally. We argue that, contrary to the World Economic Forum prediction, an owner-less future would not be a happy one for individuals. Ownership should thus be preserved as a property concept, and we offer an aspiration for it that better supports not just human happiness, but also a more socially just, sustainable, and emancipatory future. Talking essentially, we use property theory to advance property as a socio-legal construct that has conformed or has formed around the human thing, relationships that are claimed to be deeply embedded in the human condition. Property ownership can support personhood, the realization of which is, we contend, a
Right.
threshold for human happiness. Curious if you have any
Well,
thoughts on that. I mean, it may
well,
still
if you
be
think
kind of a
about it,
humanistic.
as I said before, who doesn't own anything? Children, right? A 10-year-old doesn't own anything, and that makes sense, but it becomes part of becoming an adult owning things. Also, wanting to rent things and not own things is also a very big confidence problem. We have a lot of confidence issues in the 20 and 30 somethings that I see compared to years ago. So they don't have to obligate themselves even to buying a shirt. Think of the lack of confidence you have to have when you want to rent a shirt and be able to send it back at any time. How much you have to be questioning yourself.